left, right.
This is a fun episode where we discuss Brittney Griner, what's going on in Russia, and we generally shoot the shit about current topics, current trends in the news. So listen on, let me know if you like this format, and see you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 This is SipTalk, episode 193. Today, we are vastly shooting the shit, but got some current events we're going to talk about today. What's going on in the world? What's going on in Russia? We're talking about the economy a little bit today. I think it's going to be a good one. My name is Justin DiGiulio at my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Boswell, philosopher, professional referee. I'm missing one. Bartender, and most exciting of all, accountant. James, how's it hanging down there in South Carolina?
Doing all right. Let me ask you a question. What's the most amount of money you've lost in a single day?
That's a tough one. If I had to think about that. I'm sure there's some big numbers, but
I'm sure that if you were to say I've lost a lot of money over a period of time, but I'm talking one day.
No, I mean I've had
loss
some
of
big
money that's attributable to that one day.
Now, do you mean like big deals that are just about going through and they've fallen apart? Because I've had deals like the day before contract, just completely fall apart. But
I would count that.
Lost money. I don't know about money I've lost, but like I've just been hit with a bill. I got hit with that lawsuit that guy wanted, hundreds of thousands of dollars, just like it was nothing. That was fun for me. But and then we went to court and negotiated from there. But I'm curious where you're going with this. I wasn't prepared for this question.
Yeah, I know. That's why I asked it.
Yeah, great.
No, just because, my company managed to lose $43,000 today in a single day.
It sounds like fun. It sounds like and
that's just one event, actually. It might have been more if you count the sum entirety of our activities for the day. But
so it was a bad day for the company.
One decision we made cost us $43,000.
Ooh, can you talk about that decision now, or should we get into this in a little bit?
No, I just wanted to get this started and maybe see if anybody in the comments would say what's the most amount of money that you've lost in a single day or in a single decision.
If you're watching us on TikTok or Facebook, or you're watching us on Instagram, that's a good question. What's the most amount of money you have lost in a single day? Now I got to let this marinate in my head, so I get try to figure out. I mean, I've had some big deals fall apart in terms of losing money.
I would be willing to count those as this was a deal that was going to make you say $10,000 and it blew up at the last minute. I'd be willing to count that as a loss.
I mean, I've been hit with lawsuits and just bills out of the blue, like, hey, you owe us $30,000. I'm like, what do you mean I owe you $30,000? And they're like, oh, well, you did this, and that, and this is ours, and here's the tab for it. So, stuff like that. But look, I got to ask you what you're drinking down there.
It's another Pepsi Throwback. I'm in week 3 of the no boozing lifestyle, and I think that's going to continue until I can get my weight to where I want it to be.
Oh, nice. How's your mile time?
My mile time is absolutely awful.
No, I don't know why. I thought you were working on some running lately.
I am. I've been doing a lot of cycling too, and what's weird is now I haven't gone out and run a test run to benchmark where my mile times are against where I was before, because I've just been doing training, and so I've been doing an experiment where my watch kicks out daily workout recommendations. So I've just said for a month straight, I'm just going to follow what the watch says. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to question whether it's a smart idea or whether it's what I want to do. I'm just going to do what the watch says, and I'm going to do that for a whole month, and I want to see what the results are. And
All
so
right.
like the watch is kicking out recommendations that aren't going to like give me a good measure as to what my fitness is based on, because it's just like the workouts are different than the kinds that I was doing before. But
Okay.
I
Well,
can
that's
feel
nice.
it like when I'm on
That's
the
pretty cool,
bike.
actually.
When I'm on the bike, I feel like I'm making progress, and I can look, and it's easier for me to compare my numbers on the bike than it is to compare my numbers running.
Well, for those who aren't aware of this, you're wearing what watch?
It's a Garmin Fenix 6.
And it measures your heart rate, right? Does it measure your blood oxygen level?
Yep.
All right. So
Um,
that tells you where your body is at a certain point in a workout, and you're going to know if your blood oxygen level, if your heart rate is higher or lower than where it usually is, whether or not you're in better shape.
and I can tell that, like, dude, my resting heart rate is in the low 40s.
Low, I'm usually about 50. Low 40s is pretty good. Good for you.
Like, I'd say it's between 42 and 46.
Wow, that's not bad.
But
Uh,
my mile, like, for some reason, none of this translates to running, and I cannot understand it.
Maybe it's those. Maybe it's the running muscles. So look, Raj wants us to get into the topic, announce our topic here. But I think really because we've been a
Let's
bit
call it grab
sporadic,
bag.
we've been a bit sporadic over the summertime. We've been doing topic centric episodes. We don't talk much about us. We don't talk about what's happening in the news. I wanted to run through some news articles and some things that just kind of bothered me a little bit, or just some things I'm thinking about over the last couple of weeks that we haven't broached those subjects online.
And
So,
you can't really do a full hour on each one of them, but they're good for between like 5 and 10 minutes each. And I looked at the list that you had, and I like it. So you want to just start with your first?
well, so I listen to a lot of NPR for anybody who isn't aware of that, and I've been hearing a lot about Brittney Griner and her being locked up in Russia, which sounds fucking
You want to explain to people
terrifying.
who don't know who she is?
So she is a women's NBA professional athlete. And most women's NBA stars, we all know who they are. You could probably name a couple dozen off the top of your head. So she's in the forefront of the media on a pretty regular basis. Unfortunately for the WNBA, they're not as well known. But in that circle and at a professional athletic level, she is a professional athlete that travels around the world. So why is she locked up in Russia, and why is
Well,
that terrifying?
let's ask the question: why is she in Russia in the first place?
Okay,
Because
well,
so I actually, if you were to have asked me like name a women's basketball player, Brittney Griner is who I would have named. That's probably
the
about it,
only
actually.
I think that, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, which is it's sad, but it's definitely to a degree. I would say it definitely warrants national news.
But all right, so anyways, she was a big star in college and went straight into playing in the WNBA, and was in the WNBA for a couple years, and ended up being arrested and I believe convicted of domestic abuse against her wife. And so the WNBA banned her from playing in the league because of her conviction. Um, and so she got an offer to play in the Russian women's basketball league, which she accepted. So that's how she ended up in Russia in the first place.
How did she end up in jail?
Well, right around the same time that the war in Ukraine started, she was
And she's been in
arrested
jail for roughly how long? It's not fresh news.
4 or 5 months.
Yeah, a while.
Yeah.
And I'm still hearing about it pretty much daily, which is why I finally figured we'd bring it up. But go ahead.
Well,
So she's been in jail for 4 months or
so
so.
she gets arrested in Russia probably like in the first week or two after Russia invades Ukraine and the United States imposes all sorts of sanctions on Russia for their actions. She gets arrested for being in possession of some vape cartridges that contained cannabis oil,
So it
which
was
is illegal in Russia.
synthetic weed.
Or just like can like or real weed but just like in oil form. I'm not really sure. But whatever the case is, it's an illegal drug in Russia. And she's arrested for being in possession of these.
But now,
And she's been in jail awaiting trial, and then she went to trial and pled guilty. And I don't remember what her sentence was. It might have been 10 years or something, which seems wild for to have a sentence that long for that drug. But at the same time, it's Russia.
well, I read today that Russia's penalty for minor possession of marijuana, is like 10 days in jail. So maybe I misread that, or maybe that was incorrect, or maybe it was
No, it
spot
would have been
on.
something. Yeah, I think it's 10 years. She was looking at 10 years in prison. Now, a little bit of background here. She's been in Russia for several years. So she's familiar with the laws. And from what I read, like, the she was brought there by like a Russian oligarch to help promote his basketball team. So she's been buddy buddy with people in power in Russia, and she apparently has been traveling around the country, to different basketball venues and been carrying these like cannabis pods with her, and Russian security has known about it and just not done anything about it. Now, whether that's right or wrong, but like she knew that these were illegal, and Russian security knew that she had them, and they weren't doing anything because it wasn't worth their time, or she was protected, or whatever.
And
But
Russia police and just Russia government officials in general are known for being pretty corrupt and
right, so
very
so none of
bribable.
this so far. Our timeline, nothing is really surprising, and it continues to not be surprising because as soon as the U.S. imposes these sanctions, Russia takes the opportunity to arrest one of the highest profile Americans it can think of, which is Brittney Griner. So, is she a political victim in this? In a way, yeah, because she probably wouldn't have been arrested if Russia hadn't invaded Ukraine and we hadn't imposed sanctions on them for the war. So does she get to complain about being a political victim? Yeah, but at the same
Well,
time, she had a drug which was illegal in the country that she was in, and she knew. So she took risks that didn't pan out for her.
and that's I believe it's going to run its due course. I think the U.S. should do their best to get her out of jail. I think this is a very low offense. I don't think she needs to be locked away for 10 years. I think that's absolutely insane. But at the end of the day, and this really depends on how you feel about drugs and how you feel about illegal drugs. She was doing something illegal. Um,
Well,
and
my personal view is that drugs should be largely legalized. But if I were to go to a country like Singapore, that is even stricter on drugs than Russia is, I would make sure that I don't have any illegal drugs on me. I probably wouldn't fly into that country with any drugs, like even prescription drugs. I just wouldn't roll the dice. Because the penalties are so harsh there. And same thing with like in Singapore, like you can get arrested for like spitting on the sidewalk. Like if you walk on like their streets, there's no gum stuck to any of the sidewalks. Why? Because that's a crime. And so if I'm in Singapore, I'm not going to be spitting on the streets. Why? Because I don't want to get arrested. Do I think that that's a good law? Probably not. But if I'm there and I know what the law is, I'm going to choose to like abide by it
well,
because the
that's the thing
consequences
about.
suck.
We have talked in the past about me saying that I'd love to visit China and Russia, actually, and you said no way I would go to China. You're too terrified. You make one
Uh-huh.
wrong move and you could be locked up indefinitely, and you are not a high profile person who's not going to be used as a political pawn. So
No, but just
it,
by the fact that I stick out as an American, like they're going to be watching what I do. Like I'm not an
it's really
important person,
terrifying. I mean,
but
it's
who knows? Like because like China and Russia will or arrest people for whatever they want. Sometimes it's politically motivated, sometimes it's just because. And if you're an American that gets arrested in China, good luck.
but also that they can stack prisoners and use them for political negotiating. So
Well, and so
one
that's actually what's happening with Russia right now is that the United States is trying to make a deal where we're going to give Russia like a convicted arms
That's
dealer.
that's where I'm going with this. There is the arms dealer known as what's his name? The God of War or something like that is his nickname. I wonder if this is a guy that the Lord of War movie was based on with Nicolas Cage. But
It might be great movie,
yeah,
by the
I
way.
think I think it could be, but I think this is like one of the biggest arms dealers, and we have him locked here. And what people are thinking is that we're going to trade Brittney Griner, ex women's NBA player, for the God of War.
I don't
That
think that's a fair deal.
well, I don't think it's a fair deal either. But the thing is, like, there's a lot of people that think it is because they think it's so unjust that the unjustness of her being locked away for simple weed is worth putting this big drug dealer kind of back into the hands of Russia.
And I would say that their
Well,
own logic defeats itself, which
and
is
that is exactly where I'm kind of taking this, is that we have somebody who committed a crime in a different country who is very headlineable, and the way and we're treating it like I mean, it's front page news, and we're talking about letting one of their biggest arms dealers out in exchange for her. It's
I would say if they
really
arrested
weird.
one of our arms dealers in Russia and we wanted to like do a prisoner swap where their arms dealer goes there and ours comes back here, that's a fair trade to me. Similar crimes.
Yeah,
Like if we've
but
got a Russian that's in jail for like weed possession or weed dealing in the United States, let's offer him up.
I think yeah, but unfortunately, things are really heightened.
And I'm not like worried like if the crimes are slightly out of proportion, but one of them is like multi-million-dollar arms dealing, the other
and
is having a couple vape cartridges.
and that's the thing, is like we would be overplaying that card that we have. We would be underplaying that card basically that we have in this instance, which is the situation that we're.
And Rush is saying it is the inspiration for Lord of War.
I mean, there's a whole movie written about this guy and him dealing arms and basically dealing death, and then you have this lady who is unjustly imprisoned, but the two don't add up, and I don't know how else we get her out. I definitely think we need to be trying to get her out. I think it's very unjust, but trading a international arms dealer, to me,
I just have to
doesn't
think,
add up.
dude, I have so little sympathy for her because, like, she chose to go to this
Yeah, but like
authoritarian,
it's just like
autocratic country, and she made bed with the Russians and Russian money, and she rolled the dice in terms of the privileges that she expected to get because of her status.
you're as far from your baseline liberal self as you've ever gone right now. But
I know.
I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. She broke a law in another country, and end of story.
And like
I don't think she
it'd be
for
one
10
thing
years.
because like there's times where countries will arrest people that like didn't actually do anything, like people that are on vacation in Iran get accused of being spies. That's different because you have made up crimes. This is not a made up crime. She had the things.
And she
Those
admits
things
to
were
it.
illegal.
All right, we gotta move on. But I think that's why I'm sick about hearing this. I'm sick of hearing about this at 7 o'clock in the morning, because the rhetoric around it just is, yeah, I don't know. I'm just tired of hearing about that one. So I recently heard that they're going to release. I think Apple's going to release 31 new emojis. They're going to come with the next update, which will probably come with the debut of the following iPhone. However, many people are up in arms because they feel discriminated against, and this is, I mean, one, how many emojis can you have? Because I try to find the one I'm looking for. I can never fucking find it. I'm just scrolling and searching and scrolling and searching. I can never find it. I use like the same three, like the thumbs up, the clenched teeth face, and like the sunglasses dude.
I don't think I've ever used one.
Good for you. You
Like
send a lot.
if I've used one, it's been like when like I entered characters and then like it thought that I was trying to enter an emoji and it made one by mistake. But like I've never clicked on the menu and be like, oh, this is a good time to send an emoji. Like I just don't understand them.
But
Like this is
the
old
issue,
man yells at cloud.
yeah, well, that's probably an emoji, right? Old man yells at cloud. However, it's discriminatory for the wheelchair using person. There's no wheelchair using person yelling at the cloud. And that's now you got tennis player and you got golf player and you got baseball player, but you don't have wheelchair water polo player. And that's
This makes me think of a point that I heard a long time ago on talk radio. So college football, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know how it used to be that there was just two teams that got basically picked by a committee, and they're just like, all right, you two play for the national championship, and like they'd base it on like records and stuff like that. But there was no like tournament or anything like that. It was just at the end of the season, like some people would get together in a room, and they would just say, I think these two schools should play, right?
Okay.
And a lot of people didn't like this system. I you can see why. It's because there were a couple times where like they'd pick two teams, and then there would be like a third or a fourth team that would argue we're better than one of those two teams.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of times that people are like, why are we just letting people pick who is playing?
Okay. So what happened?
So what they ended up doing is probably about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but let's say 8 years ago, they said, we're going to do a 4-team playoff. So we're still going to pick the 4 teams, but like now you've got 4 teams that are playing, and so it's just a semifinal. Like 2 teams play, then it's 1, and then it's the champion. So you at least have like teams playing each other for more than one game.
Some version of some championship.
It's a very small tournament, but now we've expanded it from 2 to 4.
Okay.
And so what the guy's name was Colin Cowherd, who was on ESPN radio at the time, and he says, look, I'm not saying this is a bad idea. What I am going to say is that we're not stopping at 4, because as soon as you expand from 2 to 4, now Team 5 and Team 6 and Team 7 and Team 8 are going to say, well, how come we didn't get selected?
Yeah.
And so then when you go from 5, then you're going to go from 4 to 8, and then you're going to have teams 9 through 16 that are going to complain that they should have been number 8 or number 7. And like he says, he talked about the NCAA tournament for basketball when they expanded to 64 teams, and that just made more teams pissed off because number 65 didn't get in. And then they expanded it to 68, so you got the 4 play-in games, and now number 69 gets in. And he basically says, no matter how much you give to people, there are still going to be people who complain.
Well,
and I thought that was a really good point.
In the football case, the more you give, the more complain, actually, because you kind of have this exponentially tail-ended problem. And
right.
I mean, up to a certain extent, but until you run out of U.S. colleges. But
but I thought that he made a really good point where, like, you're not solving the core problem. You're just shunting it to a different group that's going to complain.
I mean, just some of these news articles, I just think, like...
I have to wonder, like, if you're a journalist... Imagine you go to college for 4 years and you major in journalism, and you learn about sources and finding stories and journalistic integrity and research and writing standards and everything else. And then 6 months in, you're a new journalist, and your boss says, I got an article for you to write. And you get excited. And he says, they just released 31 new emojis. I need you to cover this. Like, do you go to the bathroom at work and just kind of like wash your face, and while the water is dripping off of it, look into the mirror and wonder what your life has become?
I mean, or you could have the opposite reaction. You could go to the bathroom throwing up, shaking, saying, this is such a big story. Where do I start with this one?
Yeah. I just imagine going to dinner, and if I was a friend of that person, I would just be so shitty about it. Be like, look, hey, Justin's here. This is the guy that broke the emoji story. Like, you guys, you should be buying him drinks tonight.
But that's why we're kind of outlining some of these stories, because they're not news. I see a lot of
the same thing for like when journalists write about what Kim Kardashian ate for breakfast or some shit.
Yeah, and then of course you got to tie it back to the real world about who was discriminated against, or that the restaurant didn't source from fair trade coffee beans or something. You got to
Yeah.
have an, there's and that's it's what happens when we have so many news organizations and media outlets. That a lot of these outlets are literally just taking like TikTok stories or TikTok posts that have more than a certain number of views, and then just writing what was said in the TikTok post and then linking it to TikTok.
Yeah. Makes me think of a question that sometimes you'll be asked. Would you rather be rich or famous?
I think Rich would be kind of the easy one on that.
Some people choose famous, and I don't understand it. Like, I would want to be rich, and I would want nobody to know who I am. Like,
Uh,
like Dolly Parton. Everyone knows Dolly Parton. Do you know who her husband is?
I have no idea.
Neither do I,
Yeah.
because apparently, like she
Rich.
like her husband's like, look,
My
I know that
cat
you're
said her
famous and I
husband is
love you,
rich.
but like I don't want that for myself. And so she's done a really good job of like keeping her husband out of the public light. And so nobody knows who her husband is. Like he might show up to an event or something and be like, "Yeah, this is my wife," but like nobody knows his name. He doesn't make any news because he just wants to live a private life and he's married to someone who's really rich, but like he doesn't have the fame that she does and he doesn't want it. I like him.
Well, it's worse if he does want it. Then he could be really in trouble. Raj has a comment. It's like Oprah. Her husband is just Oprah's husband, nothing else.
What? I didn't know that Oprah was married. I thought she was with Gail,
Who's Gail?
her friend.
Oh, beats me. I don't know enough about Oprah. Can we talk about mortgages and then talk about how we're not in a recession according to Biden? So, mortgage applications have hit the lowest since February of the year 2000.
Yeah,
So
I'm
lowest
aware. I work
number
in
of,
that industry.
exactly, lowest number of mortgages in 22 years, over 22 years. And then kind of the next
I can tell you
sentence
why.
well, go ahead.
So there's two things really. One is rates have gone up faster in the last 6 months than they have in like 40 years. So, or maybe it's like 25 years. But like we're in the speed at which interest rates have gone up is basically something that some people haven't seen in their entire life or some people haven't seen since they were in like high school. So, we're in historic levels of interest rate increases. And so, you increase rates, less people are going to qualify for a mortgage. So that's one. That's definitely having a dampening effect on mortgage volume is like just rates are high. The other one is before this period, rates had been low and they had been low for a while. And so you can think about it like there's only so much demand for mortgages, but when the rates were super low, everybody who wanted a mortgage got one. And once you have a mortgage, you're not likely to like get another one for a long time. Think about it like buying a bed. Like how often do you buy a bed?
Yeah, not very often.
I think the average is about 10 years. So if you buy a bed, you're not buying another bed for 10 years. So imagine if 1 year all beds were 90% off. Would you buy a bed? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Right, and so if you have like for 2 or 3 years, beds are 90% off. Everybody who wants a bed is going to buy a bed. And then when beds go back to a regular price, then the people that are making beds will be like, why isn't anybody buying beds anymore? Two reasons. They're more expensive, and also everybody who needed one already got one. Same thing with mortgages. Everybody who wanted a mortgage would have gotten one in the last 2 or 3 years at a nice low rate. So now the only people that are getting mortgages are the people that are able to find a house to buy. That like so people entering the housing market for like the first time, or people that are trying to like
Well, those are the
upgrade
people
their
that
house from one house to another, or people that are looking to take equity out of their house in the form of like a cash out mortgage. And there's just like that's kind of a relatively steady supply, but again that's one of those ones where like those people already bought their beds, so we're only getting like the people that are trying to do refi cash outs right now are really just like people that ran into some financial difficulty or have created financial difficulties for themselves.
So, what does that say about the economy overall? Because You had Biden that gave an announcement. I think it was earlier today about how the United States is not in a recession,
He's not wrong, by the way.
which which I agree. Actually, all the markers of a recession we haven't really hit. We don't have
Well,
mass unemployment. We don't have. Give me some other markers of
well, I
recession.
want to recognize Mike right now, just for thanks for the comments. Like, weigh in, keep on weighing in with us. But so Jerome Powell yesterday, after the Fed raised their rates by another 75 bips, like one of the questions he was asked, like he gives his like 10 or 15-minute speech about what he thinks about various things, and then he takes questions for like another 30 or 45 minutes. And one of the questions was, are we in a recession? And he says no. And the main reason he gave was the labor market is still very strong. Unemployment is super low, and wages are
These are high,
relatively
yeah.
strong. And so he says we still have these supply chain problems, and we are seeing demand for a lot of core assets and business investment drop. But in order for us to really call this a recession, we need to see weakness in all sectors, and we just aren't. So some people would like to call it a recession. I think that calling right now the debate about whether or not it's a recession is in two different arenas. The first arena is political, and depending on which way you lean politically, we either are or aren't in a recession. Like whether you want to make Democrats look bad or good is going to have an impact as to whether you think we're in a recession. But I think most economists, if you were to give them all the data, would say things are getting weaker, but we're not in a recession yet.
Well, here's my comment on that because unemployment is low, wages are high. My thinking is that by those markers, the traditional markers, we're not really in a recession yet. However, I do think the ground that we exist on is moving, and that meaning housing costs are way, way up.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation is way, way up.
Yep.
Fuel costs are way, way up. So people are making more money and are more employed, but that's actually because they have to be because everything around them is sliding. So typically recession, people are losing jobs, they're losing their houses. Here, right now, we still have them, but those things are sliding away from us in the sense that now if you want to fill up your car, you might have a job and be making more wages, but it's costing you that much more to do it. And as we continue to slide, we might be looking at the traditional, but not be looking at some of the other ones that are having a real life impact. That if it continues to happen, we're going to wake up and very much be in a recession.
Well, I think maybe it was probably about 2 years ago that I started talking about the concept of a K-shaped recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's
And so I think what we're
what
in
this
right
looks like.
now is we're still seeing that is like inflation. Who is it hurting and who is it helping? Because like honestly, for me, inflation's not hurting me hardly at all. Because I don't drive that much because I work from home. And with inflation being high and my mortgage rate being low because I got it at the right time, like inflation, if anything, helps me when it comes to my housing costs.
Right. Yeah.
And like
But that's why it's
most
a
of the stuff
explain
that I
K-shaped.
buy,
Explain
go ahead.
K-shaped recovery because you're putting that into perspective in
Oh,
one
okay.
way, but you're not yet acknowledging the other way. But you have to
So if you
explain
think
it
like,
because
so you've got the market and like you have an event and like you can think about like a V-shaped recovery. So like the market let me use this hand. The market goes down and then the market comes back up. That's a V-shaped recovery where like it's just a sudden change. And that's like when you have an event like COVID, that's what you'll see is like the market will go down and then it'll come back up again. A K-shaped recovery is the market goes up for some and keeps on going down for others. And I think that that's what, like, I predicted that 2 years ago, and I still believe that that's the case. Is some
yeah. So
people have done well because of COVID and continue to do well, and then some people got wrecked by COVID and are continuing to get wrecked. And in general, I'd say the lower on the socioeconomic ladder you are, the harder it is for you to do well. Like the harder it
Yeah,
is for
and
you to get
that
out of there.
so
Because for me, I don't have to drive. I'm privileged that I like my commute is the 6 feet that it takes for me to roll out of bed to get to my computer. And like so gas prices going up doesn't bother me. Food prices, I go to the grocery store, I don't eat that much. So like food prices going up doesn't bother me that much. I don't have a family to feed. I barely feed myself. So
so
like where is it hitting me? If I want to fly out to San Diego. Yeah, it sucks cuz it costs me an extra $200 for a round trip. But that's a choice I'm making.
um, let's see what time holds for us. I do think it's going to get really bad for a lot of people though, and that's going to cost a lot of the middle class. You're just going to continue to wipe out that middle class.
Um
Um,
I
do-
want to I want to tease this as an idea. Like I don't want to get into a full discussion cuz this one for me is at least an hour long. But the concept of I think a lot of people in this country feel that we are on an unsustainable path in multiple areas. Housing costs being one of them for sure. And whenever
Mhm.
you're on a path that's unsustainable, at some point one of two things has to happen. Either something breaks and bad things happen, or you change your approach to get off of something that's unsustainable and back onto something that's sustainable. And like healthcare, housing
Healthcare,
costs,
housing,
our political
transportation is
system in
going up
general,
in many cases.
transportation. So all of these things are an unsustainable path to varying degrees, and
Education.
education for sure, yeah. Um, and the thing that I always wonder about, and I have yet to get a good answer on this one, maybe because there isn't an answer, is what changes to get us onto something sustainable? Climate change is another. Or two, what breaks? And when that breaks, who gets hurt and what are the fixes? Because when something breaks, you have to fix it. So I don't know. I would like to talk more about that, but yeah, I when it comes to, like housing, I think is probably the one of the biggest problems in this country. In certain areas of this country, water.
Water is another big one. Yeah, especially drinking water. And uh, I mean,
Like, we could go on and on, but that's why I said like this is an hour long topic that I want to just tease out there for people. But
yeah.
when you were talking about that, I just like I have to throw this out there because I
So
think about it all the time.
I want to talk about a bit of inequity. I don't want to talk about voter laws, which we've talked about before. We had a big argument on laws like last summer. I'll hit Mike's comment here. Commercial real estate saturation, retail mostly, all the businesses raising wages, but know that they can't sustain it long term. Oh, and then water. Thanks, Mike.
Well,
So look, I
yeah.
want to
So
go. Let me
like
just hit
wages
the,
is another one because like yeah, we're gonna have to just
well,
make this a whole
again.
episode.
It's a different topic. I don't want to go
Yeah,
too far
but
down. And
yeah, like wages is another one. So good example.
um, so this is about voting laws. So I'll just read you the three paragraphs from the NPR article that I heard. I think it was Sunday morning on the radio. Monica Poole looked forward to voting in Georgia's primary in May, but after breaking her ankle, she couldn't drive. Even navigating the stairs from her second floor Atlanta apartment was impossible. So waiting in line to vote wasn't an option. Poole applied for a mail-in absentee ballot, like many Georgians have in recent years, and wanted to return it using a Dropbox. Okay. So at this point in the article, I'm thinking, unless the Dropbox is located on her second floor apartment, then she's got to leave. Got to leave her house. Either way, next paragraph. But the nearest one in Fulton County was a 20-minute drive away, accessible only during limited hours and days, unlike the 2020 when drop boxes were available across the county and accessible 7 days a week around the clock until Election Day. The
So let
new
me ask you a
restriction.
question real quick.
Oh,
Let me
let me
interrupt
just
you.
finish. The new restriction made the drop boxes difficult for use by Poole, who had limited mobility and a rigid work schedule. Go ahead.
So I don't understand why you would make drop boxes accessible only during certain parts of the day. Like the whole idea of a Dropbox is that like it's only like to get to the contents you're going to need a key. So it's not like anybody can just get into it any time. Or like well,
I
I guess
mean, so
anybody
I think
can, but like only people that have the key. So like having a Dropbox open 24 hours, like who's that harming?
well, I
Why
don't.
why
I
would
think
you
that,
like shut the door to the Dropbox? Like you
but
get the
this is where I
Dropbox
think
in like a vestibule.
they're probably putting a bit of a liberal spin on this. It's unlikely that any of those lockbox are the lockbox boxes are locked out, but there's a chance that some of the drop boxes are located inside of businesses, and maybe those businesses. My guess is those businesses probably
No,
could,
a
close
Dropbox
during the.
wouldn't be in like a private business. It would be in like a government building or something. But like they had them open 24 hours a day. If you just have it outside the door, or you put it inside the vestibule and you lock the door so that like you can't get to the vestibule at 11 o'clock at night. Like
Well,
I just don't
here's the
understand why
kicker.
would like if you've got a Dropbox where people can just drop their ballots in, what's the point of restricting it to certain hours of the
So,
day? That just
but
makes
my
no
thinking.
sense.
So so my thinking in this article is okay. So she was confined to her second floor apartment, and then it was even more difficult 20 minutes away from a Dropbox. But then I was thinking, like, the nearest Dropbox, what was it, like, prior to then? Maybe a couple miles away, so it wasn't minutes, it was closer, but she still had to leave. And then the next line in the article was, so she was forced to mail in her ballot, which I then thought,
Why
why
didn't
didn't
you
she
just
just
do
mail it
that
in
in
the
the first
first
place?
place?
Yeah, like this is an article that's pointing out some valid arguments, but at the same time they're using a pretty poor example.
This is just, I mean, it was just the dumbest. I think I've
And
heard
and,
this
and
article
at the
twice
end of
on the
the article,
radio.
they talk about how her ballot was rejected because she mailed it in too late.
But,
And
I mean, she could have just mailed it to begin with.
right,
I
like
guess she would have had to buy a stamp, but I'll bet you there's a
it,
good chance that it's the prepaid postage anyways.
I don't know, but like
I
if you
don't know
can't
though.
find 57 cents or whatever a stamp costs now, like I really don't know what to say to you.
I just didn't see this, and then the article continues to go on to say to find out it didn't. She still didn't get her vote in. She felt discouraged because she was, and this is what bothers me, because she was an African American female. This is why she felt discouraged for many years. She felt like it was her duty. But I don't necessarily, and I think the direction a lot of people took this was because she was an African American female, her vote was suppressed more than others. And that's not
Well,
what I got out of this article.
that's where you can look at disparate treatment versus disparate impact. And this article does a poor job on both fronts because you can look at certain voting laws and say it's not disparate treatment, but it is disparate impact. Where, let's say you've got two counties right next to each other. One county is pretty rural and has a population of 30,000 that's located primarily in just like that one town in the middle of the county, right? And then the next county over is more urban and it's got a population of 200,000. And it's mostly, and like most of that county is a city. So like geographically it's smaller, but the population is kind of evenly spread throughout that entire
Okay.
county. And so if you pass a law that says each county can only have one polling place, so that's not
One
disparate
Dropbox.
treatment. Or one Dropbox or one polling place. Like let's just
Well,
say one,
the polling place, I could imagine might get a little more congested. You might have to stand in line. The Dropbox, like, I don't think so much.
yeah, but like if you were to say, but in either case, like the two counties are fundamentally different. So even though you're making a law that treats the two counties equally, because of the differences in those counties, it has a different impact on one county versus the other. And so if your goal is to suppress vote of certain people, then you can come up with policies that are neutral on their face, but still have the effect of limiting vote of certain people.
Fine and very well articulated, but not done in this article. So
No, no, this like
that's
I don't think that article does any service to the cause of explaining why voter access and voter protection laws are important.
but that's why it bothered me. Now you and I obviously can have that conversation, and we can agree on something, and maybe we could even start to discuss some things that could be done, to not have the disparity there. But that's
Well, this
not.
article just uses a bad example because at the end of the article you say, okay, you had all these factors against you, but you were still able to mail in your ballot, and it was rejected because you mailed it in too late. So the real issue is you mailed your ballot in too late, not any of these other things.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, okay, this is not a good example.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, the fact that they brought up her broken ankle, her ethnicity, the floor that her
Well,
apartment was on, it just.
I actually think that those would all be relevant in a different discussion. But when you can mail in
But
your
this
ballot
is-
and
this-
you just
yeah,
didn't
exactly.
do it,
All right, let's move on to this next one. What are your thoughts on monkeypox?
I have none. I don't know anything about it besides that I don't want it, but I also am aware that like in order for it to spread, it requires, and I might be getting the science a little wrong here, but like it requires generally pretty intimate contact between people.
Very, very close contact. They're saying it may be an STD.
I wouldn't go quite that far because I'm pretty sure that you can contract it without actually having to have sex with somebody, but you still have to get like pretty close to somebody, and like probably borderline close enough that like, well, sex could happen here.
Yeah, they're saying it sounds like the majority of the transmission is via sex.
Or other intimate activities. Like I would think that like let's say you're at a dance club and you're dancing close on somebody, that might happen. I don't know. But it's one of those ones where I look at it and I say, COVID spread really easily because somebody could be coughing or sneezing and you breathe in the air. Now you've got COVID.
Well,
Like
so look,
bumping and grinding on somebody is a little bit harder. Like to say like, yeah, everyone's doing that. Like everyone's gonna get it eventually.
but two things. One, San Francisco has a. I think if they have not already, as of today, they're like shutting back down, like they were during coronavirus. That's one. But really, the second and more important question I had: when was the last time, James, you went to a dance club?
Oh boy.
Just because you're used to the language dance club, to me, just sounds
2011?
really funny.
Yeah, 2011 sounds about right.
So you just went to like a club.
This was in Barcelona, and I had been drinking for like 5 hours, and I was also on a mission.
Was the mission to the center of the ocean?
No, actually, the mission was to leave the dance club.
No shit. I just don't think we call them dance clubs unless it would be like for like 12-year-olds. They're like joining the club for dance.
Well, remember how I started off this episode saying it's old man yells at cloud? Like now this is just old man. Like you kids in your dance clubs.
So look, so this have you watched Voyage to the Ridge 2022?
I don't even know what this is.
So apparently, and I just saw this on TikTok the other day. I opened it and there was an underwater vessel had just touched ground. And I ended up watching. I don't spend that much time on TikTok, but I ended up watching
Wait,
like
what
10
is
minutes.
Voyage to the Ridge? Like
I ended up watching 10 minutes of this. This I think it's through NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I think they commissioned this team to voyage to the center of the ridge, the
Mid-Atlantic Ridge?
Yeah, and it's really cool because they are super deep. I couldn't tell if it was a manned vessel or not, but it actually looked like it was, and it was this pressurized, weird spaceship.
Mike Dowd's comment. two water cannons.
I think he might be a little behind in the.
Yeah, but
I think
that's
he might be like 40 seconds behind her. Oh,
no, but it's
yeah, it
yeah
will be
about
your
the dance
club.
clubs.
But yeah,
Yeah.
your under 21 dance club.
Oh, it's secrets.
Um,
Oh
so
man, that brings
so
me back.
um, so look, there's no dance club music on Fly 92 happening on. But this is really cool because they're seeing they've never seen before. They're seeing some geography of the ocean they've never seen before. And I wanted to mention, we got 10 minutes or so left in the cast here. Is how exciting it really is that we're on the bottom of the ocean, and people don't understand is how very little we know about the ocean floors. I just learned today that the current map that we have of the ocean, do you know what the resolution is? You can see
Like
maybe in my
one
comments here.
kilometer or worse.
5 kilometers, so about 3 miles. So our resolution is like literally 3 miles.
Yeah, whereas like our maps of land are accurate to like within like maybe a meter.
Well, our map to land, yes, but our map of the surfaces of Mars, Venus, and the Moon are
Probably
less than
better.
100 meters. They're
Right,
way
yeah,
better than the
like
ocean floor.
we know the surface of Mars better than we know the surface of our own oceans.
Exactly true. So there's 70% of the planet, and the vast majority of it we are completely unfamiliar with, which is a great deal of terrain. It means a huge amount of animals and sea life that we're discovering new sea animals every year,
Well,
every
they say
month.
there's only about 100 species left undiscovered.
Then I don't think they're looking in the ocean.
Yeah, no, like you look at the list of all the species and you see that there's 100 missing.
You're gonna have to give me where you're getting this from. I don't know how that would work.
I'm gonna let you think that one through.
Well, it sounds like a bogus fact to me. So
Throw
I'm
that
just
out at your next party.
I'm
See how
just
many
curious.
people get it.
No one will get it. Everybody will say, "Oh, interesting." To me, that's a non-fact. We talked
Because
about
it's made up.
scientific thinking the other day. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's not fill in the blanks. Um, but you need some delivery on that one, James, because other people are going to think, "Oh, okay, interesting."
It's not about delivery. It's trying to like see if people think it through and be like, wait a second, that makes
We
no
just did an
sense.
episode on how to think like a scientist.
Right, and now I'm I'm pirating that topic and
Instantly, you said,
I'm
I
corrupting
mean,
it.
I have to watch the replay of this, but instantly you said that, I'm like, oh, interesting. What is this list again? You're like, oh, well, if you look at the list, it's missing.
Right.
But look, so um, there's just weird shit going on in the ocean. You know that we for the most part we don't know what's under the ocean floor,
Well, rock.
rock, but they're also finding microbes that don't exist anywhere that are tied to like our ancient evolution.
Yeah, they find this actually when they do like diamond mines and stuff like that, is they'll get like 2 or 3 miles underground, and they'll like go into the soil and they'll be like, bacteria here. What the hell are bacteria doing 3 miles underground?
Under pressure and where there's like very little for them to consume.
Right.
If you're mining for diamond, we're talking an insane amount of pressure.
Well, I mean,
And
you're not like the pressure. The diamonds weren't created 3 miles underground. They were created like 8,000 miles underground. They just took a while to get up there. But even like 3 miles underground, like the temperature's like 120 or 130, and like it's not a great environment to be.
what are your thoughts on the Bermuda Triangle?
It's certainly a triangle.
It is. Yeah. What do you think's happening over there?
Um, Weather patterns, 180-degree angles.
Um, yeah, I don't know.
Like I don't buy
No.
into that there's something special about some geographic region where strange things happen. I think that if you look at it in terms of just the land or water mass or just area, it's a very large area, that also happen to contain a lot of shipping traffic because of just like the way that people would sail from one place to another. A lot of times it would happen to cross through the Bermuda Triangle. And so when you have a large area with a large number of things happening in it, then accidents are going to happen. It's just a function of probability.
It yeah, I I agree with you. I don't think there's anything super mysterious going on. It is interesting the coincidental number of ships sinking and things going missing
But you
there
would have to look at incidence rates per square mile and say
of the
like,
rest of the ocean to compare
right,
it to.
and
Yeah,
say, are things sinking more here than other places in the ocean? And again, like, because there's other areas in the ocean. So off the Cape of South Africa, the way that ocean currents interact and the fact that the Southern Ocean has storms that kind of just like circle around and just make really big waves. There's a whole crapload of shipwrecks off the coast of South Africa. Why? Because the weather conditions down there are super dangerous. Is there something special about it? Well, beyond the fact that you've got ocean currents and big waves, no, there's nothing supernatural. It's just a shitty area to take a ship to.
we'll say adios to Mike Dad. He's checking out. Um,
And so I look at like the Bermuda Triangle. If you just look at that on a globe, it's a huge area.
so I want to give you two sounds. I'm going to play them for you that they've heard underground since 1991. One is called the bloop. The other is called the upsweep sound. And it took them decades to figure out what this sound was. I'm gonna start with the bloop, and tell me if you can guess where this underwater sound that was recorded using hydrophones from NOAA, uh, the National Oceanic and
Yep, fire away.
Atmospheric Administration. All right, here it goes. Do you catch it?
No, but I think I know the origin of one of these. I think one of them was traced to like a large glacier fracturing.
Oh, that is it. Let me play it just one more time. One more time, because I just re-angled the microphone here.
Yeah, I heard it much better that time. I think I've actually heard that before, and I think that's the one that was like a big glacier like cracking.
That's exactly what it was. Big piece of ice falling in the water, and it sounds like bloop. That's spot on. I'm gonna give you the other one called the upsweep, and this one to me, there's a few others I found that trace back to like whale sounds. This upsweep sound to me, um, it just sounded fucking creepy. So I'm gonna play this one for you. Um, they still don't know what this is. There was another one, like I said, they found out it was a whale. But let me give you this.
I didn't hear anything. Actually, I still don't hear anything.
I muted the microphone.
Well, that
Uh,
explains it.
no, this one is you couldn't hear it. Oh my god, it's uh, it's seriously creepy. Hang on, I'll see
My
if I.
bet would like just from your description of it would be probably like an underwater seismic event.
I think I'm gonna get the computer's moving really slow.
Yeah, you need to get yourself a proper desktop.
I really do. I really do. It's another one we'll have to talk about, but um, yeah, man, this computer, I am not happy with it.
All right. Well, we got 45 seconds. How do you want to wrap?
I'm out. I got nothing. We're out of time, and we ran out of the bloop here. So, on that note, sounds like we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. Add to SipTalk blooper reel.
All right. I will talk to you. Adios. This is the other end of SipTalk. I want to thank you for joining us. If there's somebody you want to hear about, let us know. See you next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.